Have you ever just missed a race time you were shooting for? So a friend of mine missed his Boston Marathon qualifying time by 1 second at the 2022 Boston Marathon. And this gave me the idea for today's video, where you're gonna learn 5 different easy to implement tactics that will have you feeling better and running faster on race day. That can be a way to cut off some free time off your finishing time. My goal here is that you come away from this video with at least one idea that helps you in the future, because you spend a lot of time and money on training and gear. Your family makes sacrifices along the way. You can simply do a better job at that upcoming event by nailing these ideas. These are things I help my runners with all the time, and you're gonna learn things like how to do a poop loop, how to run less distance to cover the course faster than other competitors, and it's not cheating. An electronic tool that will make your race feel easier. The best tactic to have you feeling like a badass during the final third of your race distance, and how to not get surprised by any on-course characteristics. And let's start there. Just familiarize yourself with the course so you don't get surprised by hills or sand or other features. Some races may have a full point of view recording like the one I watched before the Boston Marathon, and pretty much every decent sized event has a bunch of online race recaps to check out. And if you're able to drive or run on parts of the course beforehand, that would be the best thing you can do, I think, to really get a first-hand experience of the route features. So I would say that while knowing the course is important, the next one is probably the most important, and it's about pacing. There are 2 tactics I like to remind my runners. The first is about hills, and the second is a more macro view of the entire kind of pacing strategy. And for hills, I recall a study that for the life of me I can't find, so don't ask for it in the comments, that suggested that runners in a race were more successful overall if they slowed on the uphills, let the other runners go off ahead, because very often they were able to preserve their stamina for later on in the event and ended up often catching up to and passing other runners from earlier on. And this ties into one of my favorite things to say, and is to never forget the 6 Ps. Proper pacing prevents piss poor performance. There are a variety of ways you can kind of dial in a proper pacing strategy. I'm not going to go into those in this video, but however you do that, stick to it and you will be glad you did. You'll feel like such a badass in that last quarter of the marathon distance, passing all those people. I kind of joke that the last 10K of a marathon is full of people barely shuffling forward who had a good first half, but they simply went out too fast. They ended up expiring, so don't be one of those people. And speaking of feeling strong at the end of a race, another way to do that is with music. And I know some people just don't like listening to music while they run. It's cool, I get that, but it can also be a great tool. One study found that time to exhaustion in a laboratory study was 19% longer when running with music than without music. And the authors concluded that music provided an ergogenic, psychological, and physiological benefits in a laboratory study, and its use during triathlon training should be considered. And in my experience, it's absolutely a performance booster, and it can be for you as well. Just like this next idea on how to run less distance in your race than your fellow competitors. And it's simply by taking the tangents instead of taking the turns wide. This idea first came into my head when I was running a 100 miler, and this old guy who I was currently running with at the moment, he moved to the inside of a turn and said, "I signed up for 100 miles, not 101. So consider the following. The inside lane of a track is 400 meters, and the outside lane of a track is 53 meters longer, which at a 10-minute pace is about 20 seconds over a single quarter-ish mile lap. So now consider over a marathon with maybe a lot of turns, for example, that could be the difference between a Boston qualifying time or not. Or like I once did, I missed a half marathon PR by 1 freaking second. And something else that could be the difference between a PR and being 1 frickin' second off is having to visit the porta potty to poop on the course. So let's talk about that poop loop. So this idea came about due to frustration of having to take the Browns to the Super Bowl after I would start my morning runs. And instead of having to worry about where to log an entry at while out running, eventually what I started doing was simply doing a mile loop right back home to drop the property value, and then I would head out for the rest of my run. And that ended up being far easier than having to hope I would find a place on the route to offload the freight. It helps on race day as well, because ideally what you do is you get out for a nice early morning 1 mile walk jog, you get back to the hotel room, you sink the Bismarck, and then you're done pooping for the day. The worst thing to happen before an event is to be standing in line for the porta potty and have the national anthem go off, or have them say 5 minutes to race time and there's 10 people in front of you in line. And so, like I said, I think these are all really great things to keep in mind, and after implementing them within your training, ideally they become second nature instead of having to go number 2 at the nature park. And if you like this video, here's another one detailing a science-based marathon fueling strategy that had runners at the Copenhagen Marathon running 10 minutes faster on average than those marathoners in the study who did their own fueling strategy.